Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. John jumps right in right as we're going live, as he comes barging in the door like the Kool-Aid Man. What was it this time, John?
Okay. So here's the thing.
Oh, geez, there's a huge explanation.
No. So, all right, the way that things work, you have it set up where all you do is you hit a button and join the call and everything's up and the network's off and running. Mm-hmm. So every single time I would hit join call, it would turn the camera off, basically. And yeah, so I don't know. Every single time I would try to access and turn the camera back on, it would turn the camera back off and tell me it was connecting. So I can't explain it. Go ahead and hit it one more time. Thank you. And so that's where we are this morning.
Okay. Good. That's a great start. It's about like the VAR last night in Copa Libertadores. That's probably what he was getting a whole bunch of times because, oh my goodness. If you follow the Premier League and you complain about VAR, if you're Steve Bruce complaining about VAR after the game yesterday, if you've ever complained about VAR in your life, go watch the match from last night. River Plate should not have even been in the game, but they dragged themselves back into it. They scored 2 goals in the first half, so they were down 3-2 on aggregate. Hardly anybody gave them any opportunity to be in that spot, and the referee crew seemed very determined to make sure that they were not going to be in that spot or progress any further. I'm just going to hit you with 4 bullet points from the way the second half went in this match. It was that kind of a game. First, it had 9 minutes of stoppage time, then it went further, but we haven't even gotten to why you have that much. 55th minute. Beautiful goal scored. Cross to the backside. Shot from the right back who gets forward, looks great. Okay. They start to look at it, and we're like, what are they looking at? The cross, players onside. What are they looking at? They go back in the build-up to a player coming back from an offside position by a foot. I mean, it's offside. He is offside. However, this is where it gets tricky and you get into interpretation, and it's probably why the referee went to take a look at it. River player is dribbling through. Palmeiras player blocks the dribble, and it careens off of the River player. I think the last touch was the River player. It was not an intentional play of the ball in any way. It was a loose ball at that point. They call offside. Weird interpretation situation, not exactly like the one that we saw with Joseph Martinez against Kansas City in 2018, where Mark Geiger had the cop-out explanation that the defender who blocked the pass by moving their foot in the way of the pass and putting it on the ground did not intentionally play the ball, trying to find a way to justify what I felt like was a bad call. Okay, it wasn't exactly like that, but it's in that ballpark. All right. Difficult one, close one, really tough one to call. It is a lot of interpretation. Fine. That's 55th minute. 73rd minute, Robert Rojas gets a second yellow for winning a header. I don't even know if it was a foul, let alone a second yellow. So Rojas is sent off. Okay, River's playing with 10. They're still chasing another goal. They get a penalty. 77th minute, just a few minutes later. Matias Suarez, dragged down. Did he look for the penalty? Yes. He was looking for the contact. Palmeiras player lunges with his left foot across. Left leg across, because it's not just a foot, it's the whole leg. I thought it was fairly clear there was contact. It was pulled back after a long review. Now, again, in that situation, offside will put to another put to another section right now. We'll throw the offside over here for a minute because that's a different conversation. This one is traditional penalty or no penalty, foul or no foul. This is where you get into, was it a clear and obvious error on the field? I was listening to the English language call. I was not listening to the Spanish language call. On the English language call, there was never a hint until about 5 different replays had been shown that there was any concern about an error on the decision. Because, again, it looks like there's contact. Yes, Suarez is looking for it. But he gets the player to lunge across. He gets the player to make a risky decision. And he then goes down after he is contacted, I believe. It's pulled back. Horrible decision. That's the one that there's I can't find a justification for. Because I do believe there's contact. And again, even in these situations, there doesn't always have to be contact for there to be a foul. Now, this wasn't a dangerous play or anything, but he lunges across. Like, the defender makes the decision to do what he did. Then another one. The Suarez one was not pulled back for offside in the build-up, Monteflo. That's what's so complicated about this. There's 3 different situations. We haven't even got to the third one yet. 2 of them had the offside in the build-up. 1 of them didn't. It's just a bad decision, in my opinion. Okay, so you have those. So then you get into deep in stoppage time. Like 99th minute in stoppage time. Then you get into Rafael Santos Borre, who is brought down in the penalty area. And now, it was not initially called a penalty. Then they look at it to see if it is a penalty. And it looked like a penalty. Then they find an earlier offside in the play, and they don't give the penalty. I think the game went to like the 103rd minute or so. Yeah, Monteflo, that's what's so bonkers about this, is like we can't keep up with which VAR decision we're talking about because there was 3 of them that were all bonkers. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And the offside ones, we'll set those aside for a second because you're dealing with the offside law, you're dealing with some interpretation, fine. The one with Suarez, there's just no question about it for me. It's a penalty. And even bigger thing is the way VAR is supposed to work. It's not a clear and obvious error. They shouldn't have gotten involved. They shouldn't have even sent anything down because there's nothing clear about it. Anybody who I have seen who has watched that game and watched that replay sequence has said, well, maybe there wasn't contact on this spot. There's one angle where it looks like there's not contact. The call was made on the field as a penalty. You are having to find a clear and obvious error in that decision. And there wasn't one. Because it still wasn't clear and obvious even after this decision was made. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. The offside decisions, the last one was maybe the most clear in terms of an offside earlier in the build-up. Okay. The first one, I need to check into this one a little bit more because of what I've seen since the game. I thought initially that the ball last came off of the Palmeiras player, which doesn't mean that it's automatically no offside. It's all about the intent of their actions. Do they intentionally play the ball? If it deflects, it doesn't take away the offside. This one didn't deflect. This was a defender trying to block a player on the dribble. Then when it starts bouncing around, does that take away the player coming back from an offside position? Because he was in an offside position. Yes, he's coming back, so it's his back leg that is not involved in the play, but it is because he could play the ball with that foot that was in an offside position. Really awkward, but yes, he was coming back from an offside position. The last one, yes, there was a very tight offside earlier in the build-up, and it was in the sequence of play. I can somewhat get with that. The second one, there's just no question about it. But to have a match, if you're Marcelo Gallardo and River, and get 2 goals in the first half, when you've been awful lately. I mean, River has not been good. They haven't looked dangerous in a while now. They've been amazing over the last few years, but these last couple of games, it looks like a group that is ending. and we'll get into that. But it looks like a group that knows their time is up. They fought back, and they showed their pride and their heart and their determination for the badge. They showed all of that in this match, and you have to give them a ton of credit. It's really harsh to go out this way. At a minimum, it should have gone to penalties. At a minimum. The offside decisions, tricky. The penalty on Suarez, it was not a clear and obvious error. VAR in South America is all over the map in terms of how it is used. There is not enough consistency, and you think the Premier League is not consistent. Pfft. You think MLS is not consistent. Oh my goodness. MLS VAR is amazing compared to this. It has to be better. It is not, and everybody does the usual argument, right? Everybody starts, get rid of VAR, get rid of VAR. It's not the system. It's the people running it. It's the training. It's the people that are involved in implementing it. It has to be better. We've seen this in any sport that starts to utilize replay. There is a learning curve for the replay officials where they get things wrong. In this case, the replay official has to interpret things as well. And maybe that's the issue with VAR. I don't know. Maybe that's the problem, is that the video assistant referee has to decide on that Suarez foul, was it a clear and obvious error that the referee made? Is there a way we can take that out of it? Is there a way that we make the decision that the referee can ask to see the replay if he's not sure? I don't know. I don't know. Do we want to give the VAR almost like superpower over the referee in that case to say, hey, it's a clear and obvious error? Now, the referee can say, no, I saw it, and he saw this. He was right there. I mean, there's nothing about the referee not getting a good look at that situation. It's about the implementation. It's not the system. Ultimately, and I will never change from this, I want to see the right calls made. Period. Whatever it takes to get the right calls made. I don't want to see the hand of God deciding World Cup games. I don't want to see Thierry Henry smacking a ball down and eliminating Ireland from the World Cup. I don't want to see the wrong calls result in the wrong winners. But we've got to clean up the system, because now you're getting too many situations where VAR intervenes. And one, we don't know if VAR has even gotten the right call, which that should not be a question. And two, it's not consistent when they are intervening. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. IFAB has a lot to discuss in March. They have to start to get this right. And it's probably going to be a yearly review for a while. Because that's not new. That's the thing I think we have to understand here. The NFL had replay, got rid of it, then brought it back, and has constantly modified it. It's something you have to get right, but the implementation has to get right. That's the situation here. And of course, you want to go into full black helicopter theory and all that, because it's South America and that's what we do. It wasn't Uruguayan ref on a game where the Argentine team gets hosed, so maybe he came in on the helicopter. I don't know. You're going to get that too. I mean, it's madness. It's absolute madness. And now you've got a second leg tonight with Boca and Santos, which is scoreless going in, but any call that gets weird, the Argentine media is going to go insane because of what happened last night. I think River got screwed. I really do, because especially at a minimum. Okay, here's where I will fall on it. At a minimum, it should have went to penalties, because it should have been 3-3. Now, we don't know if River would have gotten a fourth after that third goal on the Suarez penalty. We don't know if they would have converted the penalty. That's fair. But they should have had that penalty. That's the one that I cannot in any way justify them getting that wrong. That's a horrible misuse of VAR.
And just so you know, right now, juice boxes have Boca at plus 148. Santos and the draw are basically identical, somewhere close to 206 or 208. I wanted to read Tim Vickery's write-up over at ESPN.com about the specifics, about the Suarez moment. Here's what he said. Rivers soon had a penalty with Suarez going down under the challenge of Alan Emperor. Montiel was preparing to take the kick when VAR had a look and decided, probably correctly, that there had been little or no contact and that Suarez was already on his way down looking for the foul. Hold on.
Pause right there. That's the problem. Right there, Vickery identifies the problem. He gets the result wrong. Go back and read what he said.
Will do. Rivers soon had a penalty, with Suarez going down under the challenge of Alan Emperor. Montiel was preparing to take the kick when VAR had a look and decided, probably correctly, that there had been little or...
Probably correctly. Does that sound like clear and obvious error on the decision to you?
No.
Then VAR's not doing his job. Because VAR's not there to get things probably correctly. VAR is there to correct clear and obvious errors. That's a misuse of VAR. Flat out. And Vickery explains it without knowing he explained it.
Yeah.
Because you can't, VAR can't probably correctly get something. It can't. That's not what it's there for. It can't. That's not what it's there for. So, I mean, they and to be perfectly clear in the way this works, because I know this stuff gets confusing. VAR recommends the on-field review. The referee made the decision after watching it. And ultimately, the error is with the referee. But VAR should not have sent that down because it was probably correctly being looked at is not what VAR's job is. VAR's job is to correct clear and obvious errors. Probably correctly and clear and obvious are not the same thing.
And that was why I wanted to bring this up. Because of how he phrased it in his write-up in the article with what you were discussing about VAR.
If it had went the other way, if he had not called a penalty and VAR had said, hey, you might want to take a look at this. I think it's a penalty. I think you got this clearly and obviously wrong. And then he looks at it and says, I don't think there's enough to give a penalty. Okay, that's fine. There's not enough in those replays to overturn the decision. And VAR should not have even gotten involved because the replays did not give you anything clear and obvious. And that is part of VAR's remit. That is part of their job. Clear and obvious is the bar, not probably correctly.
Mm-hmm. Edmund Gibson has a Gajardo question this morning.
Okay.
And his question is, thoughts on whether Gajardo stays with River next year for what looks to be a significant rebuild? If not, where do you think it's likely he may look to go next?
That's the question in Argentina right now is, does he stick around? He's done almost everything you can do with River Plate. Almost. He hasn't won a league title. Which is kind of crazy with everything that he has done at River. He hasn't won a league title. They almost had it. They lost it on the final day back in the last weekend before the pandemic stopped everything. But he's got a Copa Sudamericana. He's got 3 Super Copas in South America. He's got 2 Libertadores. He's got 3 Copa Argentinas. He's got 2 Super Copas in Argentina. Doesn't have a league title. I don't think that's enough for him to stick around. There is going to be a rebuilding job here because now you're starting to hear some of the comments about players because the window's open and River's off for at least a month. The next competition in South America, which is going to be another mini league format, like a super, I don't want to say super cup because then that confuses it, like a large cup competition, a mini league, that's going to start in mid-February. They've got some players who are out of contract in the summer. De La Cruz is one I know of. There's at least a couple others. They've got some players who are potentially going to chase Europe. I believe Suarez is one. So they're going to have to change things up. And they're not in a great financial position. They're not in a position to be able to just go out and buy things. Like, things have changed in Argentina. I think if you don't follow it super close, like, you hear the nicknames. I mean, they're the millionaires. And Boca was supposed to come from the poor neighborhood. Well, that's flipped now. Boca is the club with money, and River is the club that is struggling. It's one reason they sold Pity Martinez to Atlanta. It's why they've made other moves. It's why they're going to have to make some moves now. it would be a process for Gallardo to stay. Now, then you look at the other side, because everybody has expected Marcelo Gallardo would go to Europe. I think that's where he wants to go. He's that kind of a manager. He as Gustavo's pointed out on Twitter and some conversations about it, he comes from more of the Italian school of management. What jobs are open now? Not really any that I think he directly fits into, but what jobs could be open in the summer, for example, if he decides to take some time off. That's where I think it could be. Now, he could stick around for this next cup competition. Wouldn't shock me. It should be over by the summer window. I think it might be the best to take a clean break now and be able to give somebody the opportunity to use that cup competition to build for the upcoming season, which is a shorter season. It's going to be a season of like 25, 26 games in Argentina. So, I mean, it's just the way the competitions are structured. It's a little more intense because it's shorter. I think he might be doing the right thing for the club if he decides to move on now to let that next person build, because I don't see him there past the summer, and I definitely wouldn't see him there into next year. I just don't think it's realistic. If he's going to go, he's got to go to Europe and get that opportunity. You know, does he want to wait and see what's out there first and stay at River, or does he want to make a clean break, let River move on, and then wait for his opportunity? I kind of think the latter, but we'll have to give it a little bit of time because everybody's still emotional after what happened last night.
Tafka's got a couple of thoughts, one about last night, but his Gallardo question, is Gallardo a potential Charlotte candidate?
No, never. No, that's the thing I think you got to understand about Marcelo Gallardo, and Five Stripe Stunner was asking questions about him with MLS as well. I don't see him going anywhere in MLS right now because I think his next jump is Europe. He's done everything you can do, again, outside of winning a domestic title in South America. I mean, he's looked at as one of the best managers. Some will argue, especially people with South American roots, will argue he's one of the best managers in the world. And he's, no question, one of the best managers in South America. He's not Gabriel Heinze. Heinze has won a second division title in Argentina and hasn't been with the big clubs. Coming to MLS is a move up for him. For Gallardo, it wouldn't be a move up, coming from a club that's won the Libertadores, twice, that he had factored into. It wouldn't make sense. Especially Charlotte, a brand new team. I don't think that's what he wants to do. I don't think that's why he turned down Miami. He doesn't want to build a team like that from scratch. He would want to go to Europe first. Could I see him in MLS at some point in his career? Yeah. He did play in MLS for a season. He had a ton of injuries in his year with DC United, but he did play here. He does understand the league. He has had players come here like Pitti. He gets it. He'll be here at some point, I think, but not next. I don't see it. I think it'd be a move that would be looked at with skepticism, and I don't think it would be the right move for his career trajectory. I think his move, he played for a long time in France. Wouldn't surprise me if it's with a top half team in France. Wouldn't surprise me if it is with a top half team in Spain. I mean, you look at Eduardo Caldet, who was at Internacional, who had previously been at Racing, and went to Inter in Brazil. Sorry, I don't want the Italians to be mad at me. Internacional in Brazil. Don't want them to come after me with a cease and desist. He went there, did well, and then went to Celta Vigo. Like, could Gallardo have went to Celta? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's nothing. And Gallardo's won more than Caldet, and Caldet got the opportunity in La Liga. So Gallardo will get an opportunity in Spain or in France or maybe Italy. He'll get an opportunity in a bigger league than MLS. So no, I don't see Charlotte as a possibility. I don't think he'd want to sit out for another year, to be honest. I think he's going to wait. My guess is if he does this short competition or not, I think he's looking at jobs in the summer, and I think he goes to Europe.
Tafka's second point says that he wants a centralized VAR panel. If a call goes to VAR, all VARs have to agree the wrong call was made, or something along those lines.
It's gonna extend the process. I don't know, and we're not gonna solve it off the top of our heads this morning. It's something that IFAB and FIFA have to figure out, because right now I still think you have too many situations with referees working the VAR booth. I think it's a specialized job. It's not the fourth official where you can go in and be a fourth when you're not refereeing that day. It's like they made the decision, and this was a long time ago, where they separated ARs from center refs, and you're focused on being an AR once you get to a certain point. They need to focus people on being VARs. And I think they need to take retired referees. I think they need to take the best retired referees and train them to be video assistant referees, because they understand the laws of the game inside and out. They're involved in staying on top of any changes to the laws of the game. They will know what a clear and obvious error is and what it isn't, if we're going to go by that standard. That's where I would go with it. It shouldn't be, as even we're still seeing. I mean, we saw the U.S. and Canadian referees that were added to the FIFA list or maintain their spot on the FIFA list, and you have guys who are VARs there who are referees. It needs to be a full-time job. And I don't know if I don't think a panel would be it, because I think that would extend the process, but it needs to be treated as a specialty aspect of refereeing. It shouldn't just be something you do because that's what you're assigned to do for the day, and the next game you're in the middle. It should be something that you are trained to do, to identify clear and obvious errors. As much as identify like the actual error that occurred, identify if the referee made a clear and obvious error. Like, that's part of the job. Needs to be there. Really, really needs to be there. And it's something that FIFA and IFAB have to get it right. They just have to get it right.
No, for me, that's the two main points where VAR is concerned. I want centralized location when it comes to league play, and I want the retired on-the-field officials in VAR positions, just basically moved in with their experience, train them to be VAR, and then that way, they're still involved in the game. You have their expertise, you have their knowledge of the rule base, and then you have them still active, but specifically as VAR. So those would be the two elements for me.
Yeah, you got to train them, got to do the proper training, got to get this right. It's got to be better. Gustavo on the South American situation with VAR says VAR was supposed to improve ref performance, especially in South America, where spoils to teams, essentially large teams to small ones, were blatant. However, the political use of VAR is as blatant as before. It's not a nationalistic issue, but it's a problem within CONMEBOL. It's still the big teams or the home teams or whoever has that power over that crew is getting these calls. Because, I mean, River's a big team, but they're not a big team in Brazil where that match was being played, and Palmeiras got a whole lot of calls. Palmeiras was horrible in the match, by the way. That also has to be part of this discussion. They had a 3-0 lead, and they came in, and they looked awful in this game. They looked far worse than River did in giving up the 3 goals last week, and I didn't think River looked good at all. Palmeiras was terrible in this match. They did not deserve to go through the way they played the second leg. But they did. That's just how it goes. I believe Byrne had some, yep, he did, good times, slander on the EPL managers, which I would completely and utterly agree with. There's about 10 EPL managers that Gallardo would be an upgrade over. I'm not going to argue that at all. There's a whole lot of them. And there's a whole lot of top managers in Europe that Gallardo would be an upgrade over. Different kind of game in England, but not dramatically different. The German game would be maybe the most different for him to try to adapt to. I think he could do it because I think he's an excellent manager. But going in straight away, like I've always zeroed in on France or Spain for him, partially down to his playing career. But he'd be fascinating in England. He would absolutely be fascinating in England with the right team that would give him time to build it. And he doesn't need 5 years, but give him a couple of seasons to build what he wants to do and implement what he wants to do. There's teams that should do it, but English teams generally haven't gone in that direction because of the fear of failure. So they turn to Big Sam or whoever else is out there available. He doesn't need to go into a relegation fight, don't get me wrong, but a club like that, like what Crystal Palace thought they were going to do with Frank de Boer when they wanted to bring him in to implement a style to get them out of the short-termism of just trying to survive, but then got cold feet and canceled it. It needs to be somebody like that, but who would stick with it. And that would be, I don't know. I don't know who it would be that would do it, but yeah, they should. He should be there. If not there, France, Spain, there's plenty of places. I think he'll be in Europe next season.
Yeah, I was just doing quick math and looking at the current Premier League managers. Wilder, Big Sam, Scott Parker, Graham Potter, Sean Dyche, Steve Bruce, Roy Hodgson, David Moyes, Dean Smith gets me to 8 already.
Well, you're looking at the manager. More importantly is the team. Because, look, Marcelo Gallardo, and I don't know if necessarily we understand this in this country as much. He would be able to call his shot. Like, he's not going to just have to take, West Brom because they called. He'll be able to wait it out. I mean, he'll have opportunities. So, the teams that would make sense for him, Villa and West Ham come to mind. I think teams that want to play, that have a culture of wanting to play. Those are two that come to mind. I think Mikel Arteta is going to be fine, but Arsenal would have been that club. He's not a Bielsa guy, so Leeds wouldn't be a fit because of that, in my opinion. It just wouldn't make sense. Wolves, maybe, if they ever moved on, but I don't know if they will. They shouldn't. Newcastle should. 150,000% should, because they should be a better club than they are, but he should say no if Mike Ashley's there involved right now, so there you go. Those are the ones that come to mind that are at all reasonable. Southampton would be another one. That's a club that wants to play. They try to have a good culture or a good style of play, so they'd be another one if that job opened up. Tottenham, if and when Jose moves on, because he will. I mean, he does. Tottenham would absolutely be a good fit for Gallardo, and to come in after a Pochettino and after Mourinho, he'd be fine going straight into Tottenham. He'd be absolutely fine. Gustavo with a question. It says, Jason, could you explain to me why there's a hype in MLS regarding Gallardo? I don't get it. Just because he's a great manager, I think there's hype, and that's fine. I think being realistic about him coming to MLS, there's not many places that would be realistic for him. And I think some of the clubs that are being talked about and not from media, but more from fans, don't fit. I don't see him going to a Miami or a Charlotte or a new team to build something from scratch. I don't know if that excites him in the same way it did Tata Martino and others. Tata was at a later point in his career. Gallardo wants to win trophies. He wants trophies, period. He doesn't want to go somewhere where it's going to take a couple years to build something. The LA Galaxy would have been a fit for somebody like Gallardo, and I think they still, fit the profile because they're about trophies, but they might be a little skittish after what happened with Schelotto. I mean, Gallardo's a far better manager, but maybe they'd be skittish. They got Vanny. They're good now. Atlanta would be a fit for a guy like Gallardo. Would he be interested in coming? I don't know, but they would be a club that would have the cachet, I think, to have the conversation. I think he wants to go to Europe. I don't think there's a realistic expectation that he would come to MLS right now. I do think he'll manage in the league at some point. Because, look, he's going to go to Europe somewhere, and if he's there for 3 years, 5 years, whatever, if he goes to another club, bounces around a little bit, he's going to get to a point where he's going to want to come back to this hemisphere, and MLS will be in a better place at that time, and they'll spend more money, and it'd be a good spot for him to come into a club. And maybe that is an Atlanta, maybe that is an LA Galaxy, maybe that is a Miami down the road at that point, who knows? But right now, it doesn't fit his trajectory because... And I think maybe it's clouded a little bit because of Heinze coming to Atlanta. They're so different in where they are in their careers. Heinze's got 3.5 years, has a couple of good seasons with Vélez under his belt, has a second division title. Gallardo's got 2 Copa Libertadores. And people will argue that Marcelo Gallardo is one of the best managers in the world. he's going to go to Europe and prove that, or have the opportunity to prove it anyway. He's not going to come here yet. It just doesn't fit. And maybe it's just a lack of understanding about who he is, what he's accomplished. He's not your average Argentine manager. He's surpassed that. So he will go to Europe, in my opinion. And I mentioned Tottenham when we went through clubs in the Premier League. That would be the level of club that I think he should get. A club, right outside of the top. And I think he can elevate it. I think he can elevate them. He's shown that he can win.
In the timeline, Nathan Pugh admits he was late to the show this morning and caught the discussion on VAR. And with a winking emoji, he asks, are we talking about all the penalties that are going to be awarded to Manchester United on Sunday?
Oh, here we go. I think Sheffield United's actually had the most penalties awarded by VAR so far this season, for your notes there. And also, I think Manchester United's had one more penalty awarded than Liverpool. So, Jurgen started a narrative, and I know what he was doing, and it looked a little childish for somebody who's won as much as Jurgen Klopp to start that complaining. That's small-time stuff, and it's a little disappointing to see a big-time manager at a big-time club start small-time stuff. But, that's where old Jurgen is these days, in second place with Manchester United. And first, same number of games. They got the win over Burnley. It wasn't, super convincing. Great goal from Pogba. Took a deflection. Burnley just sat back some more and then sat back a little bit more and then said, oh, yeah, we just gave up a goal. We should probably go try to do something. And they got their one shot, and that was it. It's going to be a fun match. It's going to be a really fun match. The criticisms at this point of Ole, can they finally be banned? Can that be blocked from Twitter, the Ole out hashtag? Can it just be completely blocked at this point? Because the guy's in first place. This hasn't happened since Sir Alex Ferguson retired this late in the season that Manchester United's been in first place. I think the guy's done his job. He's got to get past the semifinal stage in competitions. Yes. He's in first place almost halfway through the Premier League season. You're good at manager, Manchester United. You need to stop worrying about that. That's not the problem. Look at the sporting director's office if you're looking for problems. Johannes with a question about Gallardo. Wouldn't Leeds be a natural progression for him and for the club? Or are we expecting Bielsa to stay long-term? I'm definitely not expecting Bielsa to stay long-term, but I don't think Gallardo would fit the progression from Bielsa. His style of play is really different. Gustavo in Buenos Aires compares him more to an Italian manager. There's elements because of there's elements of the pressing and the positional play in so many managers these days. But Gallardo is not a true Bielsa follower. He doesn't have that influence. People like Pochettino, who's more of that, although he's more pragmatic. Gabriel Heinze would be a better follower after Bielsa at Leeds. Not going to happen anytime soon, we hope, but that would make more sense. There are others too. Sampaoli would be one again, and I know Gustavo probably threw things when I said that. More pragmatic, different version of it, but yes, he would fit that style more. Go ahead and throw something again, Gustavo. Bekasese is another one along those lines. Younger and maybe not ready for that just yet. He's got some things to prove. But there's guys in that train that are more along the lines of Bielsa, who might take it a little more pragmatic, but would fit the style of play that has been established more than Gallardo, who would be more of a departure. And I think that's what Leeds needs to look for. I think that's generally what clubs that employ that positional play idea need to look for, managers who stick with it. And they can spin it however they spin it, because it's not a hard and fast set of rules of how you play. The structure is, but it can be more defensive, it can be more attacking, it can be more risk-taking, it can be less risk-taking. It can be out of a 3-back setup, it can be out of a 4-back setup. There's so many different ways to spin it, but it needs to follow through that, or it gets complicated when you start changing these systems and styles of play. I think Gallardo would be too much of a departure. So I would go with somebody more in the Bielsa train, or at least the positional play train. I mean, you could go Dutch and follow that up. You could go somebody from the Barcelona tree. You could go Dome Tarrant. That actually wouldn't be a bad fit either. He would put his spin because Pep interprets it differently than Bielsa does, but they're very similar. So I'd go more in that direction at Leeds. I don't know if Bielsa goes after this year, to be honest. I think he's finishing the year. He's doing a very good job. They're in 12th. I thought 10 to 12 was kind of where they would fall. If they finish in that ballpark, great. They're not going to be in the relegation fight at this point. They're 12 points clear of it, so they're good. I mean, they're only 6 points out of Europe, which is wild, but who knows? Maybe they get up into that conversation. I think they're mid-table, and I think that's their beachhead that they're establishing for going forward.
And for me, looking at Bielsa and Leeds, I would think that the only other thing for Marcelo Bielsa would be getting them into European competition. That would be that last step for him in his tenure at Leeds, and then after then he would go.
People are freaking out about your lamp and your blinds and different shadows and things that are happening. There's all kinds of black helicopter theories.
Oh, so please, well, considering this is a Wall Pass Wednesday, please let me know what they are.
You can go into the Twitch pitch and see that for yourself.
All right. Well, we have Wall Pass Wednesday in thoughts, and they are from Nathan.
Okay.
And Nathan's first Wall Pass Wednesday thought is, I'm annoyed this morning.
Is this new?
What is it?
Is this new, Nathan?
What is it with this incessant need to back into a parking spot? Tell me, why?
I don't back into parking spots.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't know. I pull through parking spots. I don't back into parking spots. That's weird. Yeah, I don't know why people do that all the time.
I mean, because if I'm behind somebody in a parking lot and I see them go past the parking spot, I'm thinking that they're giving up on that parking spot and I'm ready to turn in. But then all of a sudden you see that individual sit there, they hit their brake lights, they hit reverse, you see the white lights come on, and then they back into that parking space. I mean, someone like that's completely and totally juking me out because I'm thinking I've got a parking space and then I don't, and then you get frustrated all over again and your search has to continue. So maybe that's where Nathan's coming from with this. I don't know.
See, Ricky says it's easier to get out, which sure, it is, but You're also inconveniencing everybody around you when you do what John described. It's all the rage in Asia to back into parking spots. I didn't know that was an Asian thing, Ropes. If I'm trying to do that, I just find a spot where I can pull through. That's what I do. Backing in is safer, Colonel. Not when the way some of these people do it. Not when they're not paying attention to people following behind them and they try to back into a spot. Because last time I checked, I can't read the mind of the driver in front of me who drives past a spot like you described, and then wants to back into it. I'm driving along behind them. If it's wide open and there's nobody around them and they can back into the spot, cool. More power to you. When it's a crowded parking lot and you do it, you're being a little bit of a jerk.
Yeah, I mean, because that was my first assumption in Nathan's posit.
And I've also seen some people back into spots and they ain't safe doing it.
No.
There's some people who don't need to be backing into anything the way they drive.
And they're relying more on the rear view console in the center of their dash instead of turning around and looking behind them to see where they are.
I don't care what they're relying on if they can see it. Some people turn around a lot, some people don't. I don't care what method you use as long as you can actually see.
Yeah.
Pull through. Well, I mean, just pull through. Go park a little bit further away, walk a little bit further away, and pull through.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like if someone's going to back into a space and they're in it's more of a wide open space in a parking lot, I'm cool with that completely. But if you're in a crowded area and you see somebody go past a space and you're thinking, oh, great. And then all of a sudden, red light, white light, and you're like, come on!
Yeah, and then you can't back up because there's somebody behind you, and then everybody starts honking their horn, and then it gets stupid. Don't be that person backing into a spot. You want to back into a spot, it's safer, it's easier to get out, all these things that people have opinions about, that's fine. Do it when there's nobody around. But when you do it when it's a crowded parking lot, you're being a little bit of a jerk.
Uh-huh.
That's all.
Exactly. So, Nathan, was that where you were going with this thought pattern, considering that both Jason and I have seen these instances and agree with you with stipulations?
It's annoying. I agree.
Yeah. So, and Tafka also has something that he'd like to reserve for later in the show because he says he doesn't want to be a mic hog.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll save that for later. Okay. Anything else on the Twitters?
Nope, we are officially caught up.
Okay. We will jump into the MLS CBA talk with Mike at 10 o'clock. We'll get into that. The other stuff from CONMEBOL, mentioned Boca and Santos tonight. You've also got the second leg in the Copa Sudamericana. You had the first leg of the semifinal that had been delayed. Defensa y Justicia and Coquimbo Unido in Paraguay, not in Chile, and not in Santiago, Chile, which is not where Coquimbo Unido plays, which was all stupid all the way around. First leg, 0-0. Coquimbo sat behind the ball for the most part. Smaller team. I mean, Defensa's not a big team, but they sat back and soaked up pressure. Defensa should have scored. They didn't. They get the home leg on Saturday. They should take care of business at home, but Coquimbo showed that they can defend well, so maybe they just try to extend this. I think they're coming in with every bus they can find in Florencio Varela and bring some in from Chile and maybe bring one down from Paraguay as well since they were there last and try to park it in front of the goal and go to penalties. I don't think they'll be able to do it. I think Defensa will find a breakthrough and go through, but we'll talk more about that later in the week. Second leg of the other semifinal is tonight, Vélez and Lanús. The first leg finished with Lanús 1-0, and they got that goal on the road. Second leg is at Lanús tonight. That's at 7:30. The Boca game is just after 5 o'clock. For Lanús, which is a club that Atlanta United fans are very familiar with, Miguel Almiron, Marcelino Moreno coming from there. I'm going to give you your next player to really watch from Lanús. He's not wearing the number 10. He probably will soon enough. He plays on the right side, but he can play as a 10. He's 19. Pedro De La Vega, really fun player to watch. He's the one who kind of came into the team replacing Moreno, and Moreno came into the team kind of replacing Almiron. De La Vega is a really fun young player to watch, really creative. Been a big fan of his game since he broke into the team and started to play consistently. That's a guy to keep an eye on. He wears the number 8 for them right now. I think he ultimately will get the number 10 shirt for Lanús. But they're the favorites. I would have thought they would have been the favorites with a lead coming in and a away goal. But Vélez is the favorite on the road tonight.
Plus 141 in the composite. Lanús is a plus 185 at home, and your draw is a plus 234.
I'm a little surprised by that. It's a little hard to take their form in the Copa Diego Armando Maradona, too strong because both of these teams have been focused on Sudamericana over the local domestic competition. Lanús hasn't done well there. They did win their last game 2-0 over Rosario Central. They drew 2 and lost 1 in their previous 3 games in the cup competition. In Sudamericana, they got through Independiente 3-1 on aggregate. They won the second leg at Independiente to get to this point. I'm leaning to Lanús, especially if I get plus 200 and they're at home. I'm leaning to Lanús.
I'm officially asking what folks are seeing behind me with the color schemes.
Well, now it's just getting weird because your connection seems like it went through a potato just then. So,
not a shock.
Yeah, you've turned into what's the character from the Goonies?
Chunk?
Yeah, you've turned into Chunk. Did you cross the Alabama line?
No, I'm stationary.
Yeah, your whole signal, your audio, your video, you've turned into Chunk. Your audio is bad. You completely lost everything.
Excellent. Good to know. So got that going for me.
Yeah, totally. It's good times.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you're moving again now. You haven't frozen. You're at least moving. You're sloth. Good call, Jason Nix.
Sloth.
Yeah, you turned into sloth, not chunk. Sorry, Chunk. I apologize.
Okay. But no, my wall pass, since Nathan gave his wall pass Wednesday thought, I'll give you my wall pass Wednesday thought.
Okay.
No one won Mega Millions last night. Was it Mega Millions or Powerball? Which one was last night? Mega Millions?
I don't know. I haven't played either one in a while.
Okay. So, if you did, and you won, because the cash option would be like $480 million, what would you do to help grow the game of soccer if you won Powerball?
I would invest in referee development. I would go outside of the major metro areas and create coaching courses for coaches like in our state, for example. I would get the best coaching education I possibly could, and it's courses, it's ongoing education in Macon and Columbus and Albany, in Waycross, in Statesboro, in Savannah, in Augusta, in Dalton, and because there's so much already focused on the Atlanta area, focus on coaching education there, and especially coaching education for developing technical skills for kids pre-academy before they're 12. Because if you can develop those kids internally at home in these areas, you're going to have a better opportunity. That's what we're seeing with Metro Atlanta right now, is the level of player being developed at all the clubs. And this is across the board. This is every club. This is your local YMCAs. This is everybody. The players are better. So when they get older, they're better. They're able to be taught to do more things. You can play under pressure better because you're better technically. So I would focus on the U12 development outside of the major metro areas where I don't think it gets as much attention, and create coaching education for all of the dads who are coaching, all of the smaller clubs that maybe don't have access to it. Alongside that, the referee development, because that's critical to go along with it. And this would be not gender specific. This is boys and girls. This is across the board, all of it. So that would be my focus. If I won the 750 million Mega Millions, I would put a lot of money towards that, and I'd start in Georgia and spread out. Create a program that could be replicated, and find ways as much as possible to do it without a bunch of money. Education from a coaching perspective, especially now that we can bridge the gap with things, and you can do coaching courses online. You used to not be able to do that. You can do coaching courses online. You can learn coaching tips and things, through your own research at home. I would want to create a platform that could be replicated in every state. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
And outside of the areas that are already doing it.
Yeah. Bernd is saying that he'd like to build futsal fields. One of the other things.
The other thing I would do alongside of that is, the fields are part of it, and there's some areas where you can drop a field in and no problem, it's going to get used. In some areas, you have to have programming to go along with it. And I would, everywhere I'm going to put in a futsal field, I would have futsal coaching courses to go along with it. So it doesn't turn into a futsal field that's used just for five-a-side with a normal ball and people are blasting it around. Teach futsal to the kids. Teach futsal to the kids. And that will help with their skill development. That's part of the skill development thing that I'm talking about. But more than just building them, have the education to go along with it to develop the kids.
Yeah. No, for me, it was along the lines of what we're seeing with building futsal fields, building more soccer at the station type things, and make that a national concept. And then have those in smaller towns as well, make it easily accessible for kids to just hop in a place where they just want to get up and play, just play pickup. You can do it there. So that was kind of one of the things that I was hopped into as well, if I was to win.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways.
That's like I said, there's so many different things, but that was just what Bernd was saying was part of what I was thinking as well. So But no, that was, like I said, first thing that popped into my head this morning with Mega Millions and Powerball. If you won, how would you grow the game?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to approach it, but it needs to be intentional more than anything. I think that's the biggest issue that I've seen through my time in, far more grassroots development than being at a major club, working with soccer in the streets. You have to be intentional about what you're doing, because you can throw money at it. You can throw a coaching course here. You can throw put a team in one area, but you've got to create sustainability, like we talk about with small clubs. You've got to create sustainability, because none of the stuff we're talking about happens overnight. It takes time to develop better 10-year-olds. It's going to take a couple generations, to develop a futsal community that understands what futsal is and plays it. It's going to take a couple generations. It's going to take time. So you can't just go in and drop a bunch of money somewhere and expect it to change. You've got to go in with long-term planning. It has to be intentional about the change you're trying to affect. So, and yeah, as Chiefs coach Steve absolutely points out, the whole thing about pay to play and all that, the coaches, the ones who, we're looking at when we complain about, we need more technical players in the United States. Are you going to ask the coaches to work for free? Because they can't be quality professional coaches if they're not getting paid to do so. So then who pays them? And then you go through the whole process of how this all works. Our system's structured a little bit differently. There are other countries that have pay to play. It has gotten astronomical for some, and that should not be the case. Kids should never be turned away from an opportunity to play at the level that they should be playing at. That shouldn't happen. But coaching is a profession. It's something that if you're going to ask them to develop and put in the time and be better and do their job as well as we're all hoping they will, they got to be paid to do it. And they got to be able to put the time into it. So that's part of it. And that's part of the coaching development side of things it has to go through. So we'll figure that out. But no, you can't expect American soccer to be as good as it is if you're expecting coaches to work for free. It will not happen. It will not happen. And that's why, honestly, 20, 30 years ago, it didn't happen. It just didn't. Now it's different. Now you've got more professional coaches at younger ages than we've ever had. That's why you have more talent coming through in this state than you've ever had. And it's happening in other states too. All right, John, are you ready?
Oh, why not? Let's see if I go sloth in the middle of a read.
You might. There's no telling. You're in Panhandle Internet. Probably 3 squirrels are running on a treadmill for it, so hopefully they keep up this time.
I've seen them all.
Yeah, hopefully they will allow you to tell us about Steve Apolinsky.
Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, there's only one call, one email, one contact that you need to make, and it is with Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. A couple different ways that you can do it. You can get a free consultation by picking up the phone, landline or cell, 404-377-9191. You can shoot Steve an email directly, steve@aa-legal.com, or you can go on the World Wide Web, large device or small. Type in aa-legal.com, hit the enter key, hit return, hit the arrow, whatever advances it to that homepage. When aa-legal.com pops up, so does a pop-up window, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter, and you can get your conversation started and your questions answered low right-hand corner at aa-legal.com. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama for wrongful death and serious injury matters. There's only one place that you need to go to have your questions answered and conversations started. It's Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. The website is aa-legal.com.
That was very quick. That might have been one of your faster ones.
Okay.
You're not in Georgia, though. Jason Nix is yelling at you for lying.
No, I'm not in Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm talking about clients in Georgia and Alabama. Oh, that's true when I said this here state of Georgia, because that is the standard read for the promo.
See
in their state of Georgia. How about that, Jason Nix?
Yeah, you already blew it.
Uh-huh.
All right, we're going to get Mike Conti on the line. Mateo will be active in the background as we go through some of the scores. 3.2. Too fast. Marbles in the mouth. 7 from Nix, outside of your mistake. Let's see. Ricky Ricardo, 6. J-Dub, 6. Interesting, not terrible. This might be your most average performance, John. You muted yourself, so
I'm all for being average.
Okay. Mike, you did not hear it, but I'm sure you would have given John a nice score.
I would not tolerate any John Nelson slander, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, he did say this here state of Georgia, and he's in Florida, so I mean that's kind of a big mistake.
This here state of Georgia.
Yeah, it's kind of a mistake.
Even if you're in the state of Georgia, John, which you are not, but even if you were, that grouping of words in the form of a sentence doesn't work for me.
As a fragment, this here state of Georgia. It was a predicate phrase, sir.
How are you enjoying the weather down there? Is it warmer than it is up here? Because it is freezing here.
Maybe 10 or 15 degrees, but it's been gray pretty much the entire time. So you ain't missing much other than looking out the rear windows of the house that we're in and seeing the Gulf of Mexico with their white caps at about 2 feet.
Yeah, I was going to say the Gulf doesn't really churn up all that much. If you're getting white caps out there, you either have a hurricane coming or it's just really nasty Moby Dick weather.
Front coming through, and so I've yet to see Moby Dick, although at 3:30 this morning I did see a ship heading off into the center of the Gulf away from the sight line. So it was kind of
Why were you awake at 3:30 in the morning, John?
That's a good question.
Because when you have a 14-year-old dog and the bladder to match, then when he decides he wants to go outside, he goes outside.
Yeah, I understand. At least your 14-year-old dog wakes you up when they need to do that. Our 15-year-old dog can't even manage that anymore. So we're finding all kinds of fun things in the morning these days.
Oh, I hate to change the subject so dramatically, but we're going to, because we have this. I'm just gonna read you the press release. Nashville SC introduces official team mascot, Tempo the Coyote.
Okay.
Yep. 2 years ago today, a coyote found its way into the Music City Center. Was roaming through the streets of Nashville, found its way into an exhibit hall at the Music City Center. They secured the mischievous animal in the bathroom, and they were able to remove him safely. For the past 2 years, the coyotes continued to wander the streets of Nashville in search of a permanent home. He was at the fairgrounds site where they are building the new Nashville SC Stadium, became a regular visitor to that facility, and I guess they are going to name, the crew named him Tempo the Coyote, and Tempo the Coyote will be Nashville SC's official mascot.
You know what? I know some people find mascots to be kind of cringy. I kind of think if it's something that's going to get more kids interested and it's going to entertain kids, then why not? You know, we're trying to build the game, grow the game, expand the game, get as many people into the tent as possible. If a plushy, furry coyote is going to help get some kids interested in Nashville SC, then I'm all for it.
Tempo has a Twitter account. Tempo NSC. Of course, there's pictures. There's an Instagram account. There's a website. It's a pretty good mascot. I mean, it's not like a crazy looking furry mascot. Like it works. Okay. I'm okay with this.
I remember, when Gritty was unveiled a couple years ago back in my hometown of Philadelphia. It was universally panned. What a joke. We don't need a mascot for our hockey team, rabble, rabble. And now Gritty is probably, one of the best assets of the Philadelphia Flyers organization. So I cannot slam the idea of having mascots. Again, I know some people find them to be very cringy. I think they're fun. I think we need to have a little fun. We're talking about sports. It's okay to have fun. So I hope Tempo is entertaining, and I hope he tweets well, or she. And I hope he or she is loved by everyone.
Pretty good little story behind it. I'm good with it.
Yeah, actually, honestly, that's a lot better than, no disrespect, but whatever narrative they tried to come up with for Blooper, who I believe was, if I'm correct, I think the story behind Blooper was there was some kind of accident involving a time machine.
I think so.
Oh, no.
I think it was something really bad.
Yeah, something where, like some mascot got into Stefan Urkel's time machine and someone pulled the plug before it was done.
That's
and
storylines of Blooper.
Yeah. So the Tempo storyline is much, much better as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, now to the not-so-fun news in MLS land. Don Garber spoke yesterday to members of the media about the...
Yeah, by the way, again, my invitation must have gotten lost.
Mine too.
Somehow. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. It's weird how, again, just all these invitations for media events involving the commissioner or the deputy commissioner or league things just seem to kind of get lost in my spam filter, I guess, even though my spam folder is empty. But anyhow, please continue.
It's weird. I get some and I don't get others. I didn't know anything about this till I saw people starting to tweet about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're only a 50,000 watt radio station that probably talks more about MLS than any other radio stations, plural, in this country combined.
But
and I think we do our best to provide fair, if not positive, coverage of the league. But whatever.
There's that. There's definitely that. In this media availability, just a couple of the things real quick before we get into detail. Don Garber said that he had not heard from the MLSPA after sending the proposal over about extending the CBA for 2 years, not having any pay cuts. Today, the MLSPA will be responding to this at a media call at 3 o'clock. Bob Foose will participate in the call and be made available for questions. There was a lot of talk about the 30-day window, and people are twisting things in a million different directions. Contractually, it's a hard deadline. It's 30 days. They can agree to extend it. But if you haven't heard from the other side, you can't say that it will be extended. So, I don't think Garber was being disingenuous with anything he said on that. It's just it's contractually a 30-day deadline, and that's what it is. And then they make a decision, and that's the other thing that I think people have twisted. The CBA is not broken. It's not dead. It's not done. It's not gone. This is a negotiating period that can be triggered by a force majeure clause. And then they could say, well, we tried to negotiate. We're not going to break it. We're going to continue with the CBA as it is. Or they could say, we're going to break the CBA and go back into negotiations because of why we triggered the force majeure clause. And in this case, it's because of a significant number of games that will be played without full attendance, which will affect revenues.
Yeah, and even if they do that, that doesn't necessarily mean there would be a lockout.
Right. That just means
Garber talked about that yesterday, too.
Yeah, that's where things stand. I think we've got all of those points correct. Let's start there. We'll get into some of the other things that were said when it came to CONCACAF, when it came to the season timeline, all that. I guess the CBA part is the part that's got everybody freaked out the most. I'm a little surprised that they didn't at least get a response. Just the fact that we've received this, we're going to send it to our process to have it reviewed, whatever. Just to not respond after initially it sounded like the Players Association didn't want to entertain any different changes to the CBA going into another year. Little disappointing because I don't think anything gets done without a response here. At least you're going to get a response today, and hopefully it is a measured and reasonable one.
Yeah, well, so a couple things, and I agree with you, Jason. To have a good faith negotiation requires both sides to negotiate in good faith. However, I would also just say on behalf of the player side, that it probably was somewhat time-consuming for Bob Foose and then whatever legal counsel is working with the players' union to go through all of the details of the league proposal one by one. Remember, what the league put out publicly might only be a summary of what the actual on-paper proposal is to the players. Just as if any of us signed a contract for employment, we would probably want to get it lawyered and get it looked at and make sure that, all the clauses are in order and we're signing what we think we're signing. So it is possible that maybe the players' union just needed a little bit of time to, A, go through the league proposal with a fine-tooth comb, and B, carefully craft their own counter-proposal with a fine-tooth comb. That is a time-consuming process. I'm trying to remember, I think it has been 2 weeks now since that league proposal was made, correct? Or about 2 weeks?
Actually, I don't think so. I think in some of the reporting, it was received a couple of days after it was announced.
Okay.
So I think it was received right after the first. It was either the second or the third.
Okay. Last Wednesday.
So the 30 days has a little more time. Yeah, I think it's more like 20
if Garber said 20 days yesterday, that would probably indicate that the players have had this for 10 days. Yeah. So I'm going to give the players the benefit of the doubt and assume that it is indeed a 10-day process to comb through the league proposal and formulate a counter proposal. Now, could the players have sent a quick email to the league and said, thanks, we'll get back to you? Yeah.
That's where I'm at. It's just something like that.
Yeah. You're going to have a dialogue. Look, I know the players are unhappy. I know they don't want to be going through this for reasons that they have vocalized. None of us in any profession anywhere in the world want to be dealing with the challenges that we're dealing with right now because of the global pandemic. But I do sympathize with the players. I understand their concerns. I understand why they feel the way they do. Certainly the fact that there was a lockout threat last summer probably has a lot to do with why they feel the way they do right now. So I'm not downplaying any of that. But for the good of the game, we've at least got to have a dialogue. And hopefully, Jason, I think what you said today is spot on. Hopefully, you get a measured, rational response from the players without the bluster that we got a couple weeks ago, without former players who really have no stake in this tweeting what they're tweeting, without certain anonymous Twitter accounts tweeting things that they tweet. Let's just all get to the table and work this out together, because the fate of the league is at stake. The fate of soccer in this country is at stake, and the fate of livelihoods for all of these players is at stake right now. And we've got to have a dialogue. But I'll say again, as I said, I guess 10 days ago now, what the league expressed publicly about this proposal they made to the players seems to make a lot of sense. You are looking at, you've already had 1 year of dramatically impacted revenue. And it seems that you're going to have at least a good bit of this season, if not the full season, with dramatically impacted revenue again. So if you're looking at taking a hit for 2 years, why not extend the current deal you have for 2 years? That seems to make no one's going to get a pay cut, unlike 3 of the other major stick and ball sports leagues in this continent.
Unlike the French league that's looking at a 30% cut.
Yeah.
And they're looking at that because of broadcast issues that are different there than they are here. But
exactly,
that's where things stand there. Real Madrid took a 10% cut. Barcelona took a cut and deferrals. I mean, you've got so many different situations like that. One thing, before you jump in, John, that has come up, burned with a good point on the Twitch pitch, and it led to something else that came out yesterday. So Byrne wants to see, like, his issue with it, and I agree, is that you want to see the cap grow. And yes, by doing this, it limits the cap growth for a longer period of time. But they obviously have short-term considerations, and I think the league has made their point clear on that we're having huge losses, and the owners are taking that right now on. And the conversation from the players' side has affected the league's decision here. And I thought Don Garber explained it really well yesterday. Back in the summer when they negotiated, the players made it clear, and this is from Garber, and maybe it's not true, maybe it's exaggerated, I don't know. But Garber said that the players made it clear they could not handle pay cuts. They could not sustain pay cuts right now. That's why it only ended up being 5%. That's why the league submitted this proposal that did not put pay cuts on the line. The players did say publicly at the end of the season that they would not entertain further pay cuts. So it does sound like those things are in alignment. And if the players won't entertain pay cuts in the short term to help the league recoup some of the losses, then you have to extend the CBA. And that's really, like, that's where it starts, is which philosophical route are you going to go? Are you going to cut short term to limit losses, or are you going to absorb the losses over a longer period of time? I don't know if there's another route to go down from the strategy here.
Well, let me just build on to that for a second. I mean, the players might be actually taking a little bit of a risk if they don't agree to extend the current CBA by 2 years, because if, say, you let this CBA expire when it's supposed to, which I think is 2024, am I correct on that? 2024 or 2025?
I think it's 5 after the summer renegotiation.
So if it's 5, and you don't want to extend by 2 years to take it to 27, you let this run out in 25, you don't know what the global economy is going to be looking like in 2025, and if it is recovered to the point where you would get what you would have otherwise gotten if this current CBA were to be extended by 2 years. So I do think there is a certain amount of risk in play by the players by not extending the current deal. As far as Burns' point about wanting to see the salary cap grow, which is an absolutely valid point, that would be good for the league, not just the players, because they're going to get a higher caliber of player in the league. Jason, you and John, you guys might remember this better than I. In the CBA that was agreed to last February, and then I don't know if this part of it ever got ratified, but wasn't there a percentage of the new TV money that was guaranteed to go to the players once that new media deal was in place in 23? Am I remembering that correctly?
That's right. I think in the renegotiation, the start of that share was pushed back a year.
But it still exists, correct?
But it still exists, yeah. So
that's how you grow the salary cap right there.
And that would be, I think, the way to handle that, from my mind, to continue to grow the league, because you have to look at the short term, and it stinks to have to do it, but it's the reality we're all seeing right now is, revenues are down, and anything you want to talk about, they're down. So you got to deal with that. You do expect that they will grow, and I think there's a lot of positive signs for MLS that it will grow. I mean, the Brian Reynolds potential transfer, just transfers in general, bringing in more money through player transfers is something that the league really hasn't done much of in the past. And I think it's very likely that they will do that almost immediately. So you're looking very good for that. I get this negotiation. Maybe you create a caveat that you'll sit down at the table in 3 years or 4 years or whatever, once you get that new media deal done, and once you get closer to the 26 World Cup and start to see what the effects of that can be, and maybe find ways to increase the cap earlier, because it would help both sides if you do. But I get why the league put this on the table if the players have made it abundantly clear they won't take a pay cut right now, or they can't take a pay cut right now. They can't handle that at the moment, so this is really the most fair way. We'll see what they have to say today.
Yeah, and I think bottom line, I mean, before we see what they have to say today, I don't think these two sides are very far apart.
I hope not.
To be totally honest. I mean, this does not sound like we're going to go into a deadlock. The only way it becomes a deadlock is if one of the sides says we won't budge. And I just don't think we're in a state of the world right now where anyone in any negotiation can say, I won't budge. I don't think we're there right now. The economy's in the tank. The virus is getting worse. We are rolling out the vaccine, but look, there is just no way that we're going to have completely full stadiums in this country in any sport prior to this summer. I just don't see any way. And it might even be longer than that. So when the initial CBA was agreed to last June, that did not seem likely. Now it is likely. So the stance of we won't budge, I don't think is a reasonable stance because things have changed dramatically and they continue to change dramatically. And I think both sides, the league and the players, need to be incredibly careful and incredibly conscious of the fact that a lot of people are suffering right now. A lot of people are out of work. A lot of people are having their livelihoods threatened. A lot of people are having their health threatened. And you have to be very, very careful about the optics of this negotiation when you have so many of your fans and supporters and the people that fuel this league with revenue in those types of circumstances.
No, Mike, you mentioned the fate of the league, and it is more than just players and franchises. It is everyone who is getting kind of a paycheck in a 2-week period or on a day period, those who work in the arenas when you have fans in the stands. The trickle down here for having a side that will not budge, regardless of which side that is. You mentioned the fate of the league. It's the fate of the leagues, the franchises, the markets that these folks are in. There's all of these different elements that are in play. If you have a side that doesn't budge with a league that has done a tremendous amount of growth with its product over the last decade.
Yeah, but again, I'm just really optimistic. I'm surprised still to see the level of concern that seems to be out there among fans. I'm just, because again, to me, it doesn't feel like they're that far apart. It doesn't feel to me like a nonsensible proposal is the only one on the table. In fact, quite the opposite. And also, I think to an extent, you still have the benefit of time. And yes, I understand that training camps open in less than 2 weeks now, and I guess that's going to be the first kind of showdown in this whole situation because Garber made it sound yesterday like they expect that to open on time.
A little bit later, it seems like. Just a little
maybe slightly later, yeah. But I mean, it might end up being on the players then. If there's not going to be a lockout and if the current CBA is still in place, that puts a lot of pressure on the players to show up for the start of training camp whenever that happens. But I don't know. I really feel like a lot of common sense ideas are on the table right now that these two sides really should not be that far apart. If they are, a lot of it has to do with the acrimony that occurred last summer. And, I'm not sure the lockout threat last summer was necessarily the right tactic, but it was a tactic that achieved its goal, which was to get both sides to agree to the CBA. So I don't know. I'll be very, very happy when we don't have to talk about CBAs anymore. I feel like we've had to talk about this in each of the last 3 off seasons, and it's just.
You don't like good. CBA down here, Mike?
I don't.
I don't.
I don't like.
I
that
like
show
soccer down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But hey, look, I really, and I know Jason, you wanted to get on the calendar and everything everything else that Garber talked about. I really was encouraged to hear him say that they're still looking at mid-March, that they aren't looking at doing a regional schedule, that, it could look relatively normal. That to me seems to indicate that they have very optimistic plans for as close to a normal looking season as they possibly can.
Yeah, mid-March would just be a couple of match weeks from the normal kind of schedule that we saw with MLS Cup planned to be in November. You're squeezing a couple of match weeks in. You can do that with midweeks. That can happen this year. You can make that happen. to have a normal kind of a season without the weirdness, without the unbalanced schedule. I mean, it's still going to be a little unbalanced, but far more balanced than it was last year. All that with an all-star game, with the Leagues Cup, with the Open Cup, with everything else you want to do, I think is critical. Leagues Cup and Campeones Cup and the stuff with Liga MX is not an accident that's a big part of this, because I think that's a big potential revenue source that hasn't been fully realized yet. It sounds like all those plans, MLS really wants this year to be as normal as possible. And that would be why they are trying to push forward, and that's why they're going to have more games with either behind closed doors or limited attendance, because the schedule itself, the timeline, is more important to get on that normal timeline for a lot of reasons. And I think the relationship with Liga MX is one big part of that, because that's a potential growth area that the league has to start realizing. And Liga MX might need to do it as well because of their revenue losses.
Yeah, and I don't really know what the TV revenue is like for Leagues Cup and Campeones Cup right now. I mean, I know that ESPN has televised it because they are a broadcast partner of the league, but I don't know if they paid anything extra, and I don't know.
I think they did. No, I think
they did.
Yeah,
well, I don't know
think
if
they
the
did
league
alone.
is trying to get more on top of what they got in 2019.
100%. Yeah. Because it's the start. You know, like if you connect all the dots. You had Liga MX, the commissioner, the president of the league, step down to oversee the international department, which is mostly this, along with CONMEBOL. That is where it's not a revenue item right now in a big way. I'm sure that first year, it was minimal. Maybe Today NA gave a little bit more because they were going to get more out of it. But going forward, if you're looking to add new revenues, relationship with Liga MX is critical, and you got to start somewhere. So you got to get that underway this year.
Yeah, 100%. And the good thing too about Campeones Cup and Leagues Cup is you can play that later in the summer, July, August, September, when hopefully you've got the worst of this behind you. International travel won't be as onerous, and hopefully you can have relatively full stadiums by then. I don't even think that's being overly optimistic. I think that's realistic if you look at the vaccine rollout and also the, behaviors of this virus in warmer weather months. So that's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal. And, going back to what we talked about with starting in mid-March, if you're looking at the likelihood of empty stadiums or very, very low capacity stadiums in mid-March, that's still not really the end of the world for this league, because if you're a team like, say, Red Bulls, who are averaging, 19,000 a game in a 25,000 seat stadium, if you have 3 or 4 home fixtures that are empty, you can make up that revenue pretty quickly if you sell out your 13 or 14 remaining home fixtures, which is easier said than done, honestly, but at least it gives you a chance. So it's a tricky spot for the league. I still think it might be in everyone's best interest to start in April and end in December, because we were able to pull off a December ending last year, or this most recently concluded season. I think just buying a little bit more time might be helpful. It's going to get really tricky now with CONCACAF potentially starting in April. Really, really tricky for the CONCACAF participants, just from a travel standpoint and a match compression standpoint.
I don't think it's too bad. It's not great, but that's the thing that MLS has to embrace more. Yes, it's additional games during your league, but if you want to be a top league, if you want to be a top team, Manchester City does it, Barcelona does it, Bayern Munich does it. And they have a more robust. I mean, the English teams have 2 cups domestically to deal with alongside of all of that. The South American teams do it. Like, it's part of being big time. So you're going to have some games in midweek. All right. Then you have to play the kids in those league games to give guys a break. And that's how you got to do it. In MLS, it should be easier, because if you're if you're Liverpool and you're dealing with cup competitions and Champions League and league, you have a loss in league that could cost you the title. In MLS, it might cost you a little bit of seeding going into the playoffs. I understand the mentality, but we've got to, I think, change the mentality that it's a challenge, but it's just something you have to do if you want to be a top club.
Now, it is, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I would just point out that, say Tottenham going to Chelsea for an FA Cup game
100%.
is a little bit different than Seattle going to Costa Rica for a CONCACAF Champions League.
It's not that
game,
different than River going to Medellin, though.
No, that's true. Yeah,
for champion for Copa Libertadores. So
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, it's just it's the challenge of it. But the international play, again, it's another revenue source. It's another opportunity to put yourself on that bigger stage. And for MLS, we've talked about the financials. They can come out of all of this with the pandemic maybe faster than a lot of other leagues around the world can. These are good things, but ultimately the way you become a top 8, top 6 league in the world is you win your continent's Champions League. And they haven't done that yet. So you got to beat the Mexican teams. You got to win Champions League, whatever it takes.
100%. We're getting closer.
It's close.
MLS is getting closer, but you've got to embrace the competition in order to win it.
Yeah. And that's just the life cycle. I mean, I think American fans have to understand that a little bit too. As we talked about River Plate earlier, and Marcelo Gallardo and the run he's had at River. They haven't won a domestic title, and he's won 2 Copa Libertadores, but he didn't win a domestic title because the way things fell. They put so much emphasis on the international play, and it was seen as an absolute complete success. You might not win the domestic title in a year where you make a deep Champions League run. I'll take that trade-off. Every day I'll take that trade-off.
I would too.
Win CONCACAF and go out in the semifinals of the league. I'll take that.
Yeah. No, I would too. But it's a different way of thinking for the casual American sports fan.
It is.
That's accustomed to the NBA champion being the world champion and the Major League Baseball champion being the world champion. It is a different way of thinking. I think here in Atlanta, it's something we would embrace. I wonder if it would be embraced in the exact same way in, say, Chicago.
Down to education.
Say that again?
It's down to the education.
Yeah.
It's something that the soccer community and the clubs and the league have to educate on how big of an accomplishment it is. If as we talked about during CONCACAF in Orlando, if LAFC had won that last match, they're going into the Club World Cup, and they would have an opportunity to play a meaningful game against either the winners of the Copa Libertadores or the winners of the UEFA Champions League. Never had that opportunity. And it is a true world champion situation, but you got to win your way into it.
Exactly. And I think part of it too is, and I'm glad that FIFA is expanding the Club World Cup because that will add to its stature.
That's a little complicated. And I don't even know what they're going to settle on with that, because I think that's actually come up for debate again, because they were going to do that once every 4 years, which was going to be weird. It was going to replace the Confederations Cup, which not everybody was on board with, because then clubs are going to be playing in the summer in this competition, and it was just weird. They're not going to do it anytime soon. I do think they need to look at ways to expand it a little bit, but it's really hard with where it fits into the calendar right now, and this year's not the best example of it because it's beyond bizarre. But Bayern Munich's going to have to take a couple of weeks off from league play, make those games up, and travel to go play in this thing. And that's really hard for them to embrace at this point, because they're not being, they're not tested yet in this competition. They're the clear favorites. They're like, well, why should we be taking this so seriously? Everybody else is trying to chase them. There's work to do. I don't know how expanded it will actually be on a regular basis. That's where FIFA needs to be more clear about this, and they need to get the buy-in from all the different confederations.
Then let me ask you guys this. When it comes to CONCACAF Champions League, in Europe this year, specifically the Premier League and in other leagues, you're seeing teams that are not a part of the discussion closer to winning titles and being in European spots that we haven't seen previously. Would this year be one of those years that you could see that for an MLS side going further in CONCACAF Champions League, much like the LAFC example, again, from the beginning of the 2021 competition because of what we're seeing this year? Or is it more difficult for MLS because they're getting a later start and the Clausura is already going on for Liga MX?
Well, and I'll throw another log onto the fire. Are you going to have a full on-time start to training camp in MLS?
Sounding like February.
And is it going to be a full training camp with no disruptions or anything like that? Because that's a big part of it.
If they do what they've said, and there's a lot of ifs, there's a big if with the CBA negotiation. If they start in early February and the season's going to start in mid-March, that's a full preseason, 6 weeks. I would consider a full preseason. I'll take that. I think they can do it, but the disruptions, I mean, look, beyond the CBA stuff, and Turner Kirby, asked a question about this. We're seeing it in the NBA. I mean, they've had disruptions, and they've tried to do everything as perfectly as you can do, and they're having disruptions to their schedule right now. We don't know if it's going to get worse. So, even if you create everything properly with the CBA, do you not have teams have to stop training camp for a week because of COVID?
Yeah, you could. I mean, the Dallas Stars are really a bigger example than anything in the NBA. The Dallas Stars have 14 players with COVID.
And 17 total of the 27 league positives, right?
If you're not following the protocols internally, these are the things that happen.
Right. Mm-hmm. The NBA has run into trouble because of contact tracing.
Right.
Philadelphia is actually a pretty good example. Seth Curry tests positive, sits on the bench for a quarter before someone gets him and says, "You're positive, get out of here." No one else tested positive on that team. Everyone else has been out because of contact tracing. Washington Wizards, same thing. They lost their game against Utah tonight. Not because of a big, glut of positives, but because of contact tracing. The NBA is learning, along with everyone else as we go through this, that, it is imperative to be cautious, but the contact tracing may actually go too far in the direction of being cautious.
If you're testing every day.
And that maybe the quarantine periods need to be reduced if you continue to produce a consistent number of negative tests. Mm-hmm. The nightmare scenario that you would be talking about, Jason, in a training camp is the Dallas Stars.
Right.
That basically have the whole team. Now, fortunately for the Stars, it sounds like almost everyone's asymptomatic. I mean, no one's really sick. So that's obviously a good thing from a health standpoint. But the entire team got wiped out by this. And they're missing the start of the season, and they're not going to play for another week at least. That is the scenario that could absolutely derail an MLS training camp. And it's not necessarily something that you can guard against, even if you bubble a team within a home market. It goes back to what we talked about prior to the MLS's back tournament, where you need to have certain firewalls in place where if you have your entire group together in close proximity and one or two people get it, it's going to spread like wildfire. Whereas if you can separate your groups as much as possible, you build in firewalls where it doesn't wipe out an entire team. And I think that's something that the league and the players union and the medical advisors on both sides are going to have to look very, very carefully at, because I would be curious to ask a player. I mean, did you get enough out of the small group trainings to make you feel prepared by the time you got to Orlando? If so, that would sound like a viable way to approach your training camp. Keep it in small group sessions as much as you can.
I don't know if it's that, Mike. And that's where it's hard. Look, I don't know if we're ever really going to know until we're done with this thing and people can go back and truly study it. If you're not having issues with transmission in games, training sessions, I think there's a way to do it safely because we're not seeing it across all sports where players or teams are having these outbreaks internally. It feels like where they're happening, it's because people aren't being smart about the way they're training. Do you need to modify maybe, and a lot of coaches are already training in this way because you don't want players standing around. So, okay, in general, you don't want players standing around during a soccer training session. You don't want them standing in a line, to do a shooting drill. Right now, you can't have them standing around in a drill like that because then they're hanging out, and you don't want them hanging out around each other for an extended period of time. So you might have to, I think, be smart about the way you structure your training, but you can train in a normal way because you can play, and you're not having these issues. I don't think you have to go to small group to not have an outbreak, but you do have to be thoughtful about how you train, but more importantly, I think, how you do everything off the field. The locker room situations, the meals. I mean, it feels like those are the bigger issues. And I'd be curious to hear what happened with Dallas Stars. And I do not know hockey team training and how they avoid, standing around in a tight space for a period of time where then you increase the risk of spread. But, on a soccer field, good teams, you're training in motion the whole time. You're not around a particular player in that CDC guideline of being within close contact for 15 minutes. If you're training properly anyway. And if you're not, then, well, now you have another challenge to deal with.
John, you've been in hockey dressing rooms before.
Yep.
Players seem to be there for a long time untaping and getting undressed, don't they?
That is correct.
Can't do that.
And it's close proximity, and it is a lot of tape, and it's a lot of sitting down, and it's a lot of music, and it's a lot of congregating. It is a very slow process.
And it's a much smaller dressing room than what they typically have in the NFL, where there also tends to be untaping and lingering. That was a big, big concern of mine for the National Hockey League. Like the amount of time players spend in the NHL dressing room is probably magnitudes longer than the amount of time that an NBA player needs to spend in the locker room or a soccer player needs to spend in their dressing room. So Gary Bettman and his medical advisors, they've got a really tricky thing to figure out. And in a lot of those NHL buildings, they don't have the auxiliary dressing room space where they can separate teams and it's only 5 or 6 people per dressing room. It's just not set up that way infrastructurally.
Yeah, I know football's probably had that issue too. I think some of the teams that have had outbreaks have probably struggled with that because, it's a team. You're used to being around your teammates. So, a lot of the bonding, which a few coaches have talked about, I think a few MLS coaches talked about last season, is a lot of the team building, a lot of the bonding happens over meals. It happens, after training where guys are cutting up, joking around, building relationships. And you just can't do that right now safely. You just can't. And that's one of the harder things about it.
Yeah. I know NBA players are really upset about, the new protocols that have come down, which basically locks players in their hotel room except to go to the arena. And look, if I were on the road with the Hawks right now, I would hate that. I'd be miserable. But unfortunately, that's where we're at right now.
But I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's either that or go into a bubble, and neither option is really good. But I would rather be non-bubbled and see my family.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's going to be tough for another at least couple of months until we start to see some effects of everything. And who knows? It will affect the MLS season in one form or fashion, and maybe we'll have a better sense of at least where the talks are between the players and the league later today. We got to save a few things for stoppage time later, right?
Yeah, we haven't even talked about Caicedo. We haven't even talked about, I thought LAFC, not LAFC. I thought Portland did a really good piece of business yesterday, getting $500,000 from LAFC. We can talk about that. Really anything on your mind, MLS-wise or otherwise, 2 p.m. on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page. We'll have stoppage time.
Join us for that, and I'll talk to you then, Mike. Thanks.
Okay, guys, take care.
Be good.
Make sure you're following him, too, on Twitter, MikeConti929. All right, we got about 14 minutes, and I think my voice has about 14 minutes left. So what do we have on the Twitters to wrap?
All right, so what do we have on the Twitters to wrap as I change pages quickly?
Uh-oh.
Okay, so I was just flipping back and forth. I had multiple windows open. Nathan Pugh was quite happy with the derailment over parking. Tafka. Here's Tafka's question that he didn't want to be a Mike Hog about.
Okay.
In 2022, assuming even schedules and the way MLS goes, do you favor Atlanta, Nashville, and Charlotte creating an Appalachia Cup like Cascadia?
Sure. I don't know what you call it. If you want to call it that, fine. See what the different fan bases settle on. But yeah, I'd love to see something like that. You know, people get bent out of shape if the teams created or if the league started pushing it. If supporters want to see something like that, reach out to supporters in those markets. And maybe it's talking to the supporters groups here, and then it becomes organic that way. That'll have the most staying power. But yeah, I'd love to see something like that where, you know, those three markets that are close, that do have a lot of things in common, have some kind of a official, unofficial competition. Would love to see it. Would absolutely love to see it.
And getting into the mascots discussion, Michael Head said, please God, no mascot for Atlanta United. Please no, or bring back Izzy.
Give me a mascot. I don't care. It's for kids. I mean, you can have fun with it, and just like the Nickelodeon NFL broadcast was for kids, I've seen a lot of adults who enjoyed it because we're all big kids in a lot of ways. You can have fun with it, but I don't mind. You know, if it's something to add to what you're doing, great. It's all how you implement it. It's just like anything. And there's been a bunch of questions about the kit leak, which I think was a mock-up, not even a leak, to be perfectly clear. Some people are gonna like things. Some people are gonna hate things. You can't make a mascot or a kit or a logo or a tagline or anything that every single person that's part of that fan base loves to the end of the earth. You just can't. So you try to create things that appeal to the majority of the base, but you also have to consistently freshen things up, and you have to try things. So, you know, there's a lot of people really bent out of shape because they don't like this, and they're going to definitely try to lobby everybody and make sure that everybody doesn't like it. It's a shirt, you know. It's not the end of the world no matter what. If they create a mascot for kids, Jarrett_Smith saying it needs to be a Phoenix mascot. Go bird, because you have all kinds of birds in the city, and you can go all kinds of different directions. Some people will hate it. Some people will say it's stupid. Some people will yell at the social media team about it. Some people will just yell in general about it and say, this is what small clubs do, and all these different things. And some people will love it. And that's okay. That's branding. That's marketing. You want to hit as many people loving it as possible, because that's what good branding and good marketing is. But, you know, none of it's the end of the world. The most important thing, we talk about branding. Yeah, we talk about kits. Yeah, we talk about taglines. We talk about logos. We talk about crests. We talk about marketing campaigns. But it's a distraction. What matters is the game. You know, if the team on the field is wearing a shirt that you don't like, but they win 3 trophies, are you going to complain? Really? Are you going to be that upset about it? Probably not. If they introduce a mascot and they win a trophy, are you going to still be mad about the mascot so much? Probably not. You know, like, it's all part of it, but the most important thing is the product on the field. It always will be. It has to be. We'll see. We'll see what happens with everything. I'd have no problem if Atlanta United had a mascot, as long as it's executed well. I mean, Gritty was like a big risk the way they did it, and in a market like Philadelphia with a fan base like the Flyers, huge risk to do that. Mm-hmm. And they nailed it. And everybody loves Gritty, I think, or they should anyway, in my opinion. It's went really, really well. I like the little story with Tempo the Coyote. It fits. It's something that if you're in Nashville, you probably knew the story or at least knew part of it. Cool. Works. If you do something here, have a good story, make it fit. Don't have it as a whatever the blooper story is, because that's just ridiculous. Make it fun. Or go completely off the rails like Gritty is. I mean, Izzy is not really that far off the rails when you talk about the 96 Olympics. It was the Gritty of its time. So if you go down that road, you go down that road. Just, it's part of things. It's not everything. What's everything is the games. What's everything is the product on the field. That's the number one aspect of it.
One more point on Gritty, actually, from Rich Ransom. Rich says, Mike was right. In 24 hours, Gritty went from what is that thing to we will fight for Gritty.
Yes. Ricky's very mad because I'm slandering Blooper. I don't like Blooper. But do I hate the Braves because I don't like Blooper? No. I just don't like Blooper. I think it's a lame mascot. But I don't really think...
When I was a kid, it was the bleacher creature and Chief Nakahoma.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to have the Chief come back. That ain't happening.
No, but you still had mascots.
I don't remember the bleacher creature. I don't remember that one.
Bleacher creature was this green mass, basically, that wore a Braves baseball hat, and it really didn't have a whole lot of.
So it was a gritty,
identifiable. Kind of yeah.
Okay.
It was just the bleacher creature. It was just kind of there.
Now I'm getting a red card from Ricky Ricardo.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you what, Ricky, when I'm watching the Braves and I'm worried about who's going to get the big hit or who's going to come out of the bullpen, I ain't thinking about Blooper. Okay, no. So it's not that big of a deal. I just don't think they did a good job executing on that mascot, that's all.
And Jason Nix sends a story link. Did you see this about Manchester City in The Athletic?
No, I did not yet. What is it?
Okay, so Jason says, here goes Man City again, breaking the law. Man City accused of creating a fake job for a young Brazilian player's dad reminds Jason of SEC recruiting tactics.
I did see that. It's like bringing somebody's dad onto the college basketball scouting department or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. There's a lot of rules about signing players under the age of 18, and I guess they were trying to find a way around it. It does remind me of college recruiting because colleges will skirt the rules and what they can do and what they can't do, and they will do as much as they can until they get caught. And this is a different thing. Now, this is a different thing than financial fair play. This one's a little bit harder to weasel your way out of. Barcelona had a huge problem with this, with bringing in players under the age of 18 into La Masia, and it was a big issue that they had. So this one is far more risky to do, and it doesn't sound like it's going to go well for Manchester City. So
no,
we will see where that goes. What else?
That's it. We're caught up on Twitter.
Okay. South Georgia United says, never liked the peach kit because of Tennessee orange. I'm sure there's some people who loved it because of that. It wasn't exactly Tennessee orange. It was a little bit different shade, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was just like straight up peach. I mean, because when Tennessee orange is more of that vibrant orange.
I always think of it as more like I'm mixing it up with Texas too. Like they're not like neither one is orange like Clemson.
No,
like that's a different orange.
Yeah,
or the Netherlands.
Texas is more of a burnt orange and
burnt sienna from the crayon box.
Yeah, it's that way. Where Clemson is more of that electric orange, and Tennessee is. I mean, it is just as it is orange. I mean, it is straight up orange.
Yeah, the peach one was a little different. It definitely had orange tones.
Yes.
But Jason Heinley said, never liked the peach kit, so I didn't get it. Still cheering for my team. I like the new expected primary. I like it too, but I'm not a kit nerd. I'm definitely not the person to be judging fashion, so you don't want me doing that. People like it, cool. If people don't like it, that's okay. There will be another one in a couple of years, if that's ultimately what it ends up looking like, which I think was a mock-up. So, it's just how it goes. Like, any team, I mean, I remember when Barcelona did hoops as opposed to vertical, and it was like, what is Barcelona doing? And it worked because they had a fun team, and you see highlights of the front three with Neymar and Messi and Suarez in that kit. Okay, cool. Teams will take chances.
Okay.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, Tafka says Tennessee's basically orange sorbet, like push pop orange.
There you go. I thought I would have said lighter than like a Clemson orange, but again, I'm not the fashion one here, so I got nothing for that. Okay, one thing we did not get into that we will dig deeper into tomorrow is Sportico had an article from John Wall Street about the World Cup 26 host city mystery. It's very complicated right now because you can't do a normal bidding process for the cities who are trying to host games in 26. I've talked to people who are involved in the 94 World Cup, and they're concerned because of all the delays. And look, there's nothing you can do. It's a pandemic. But you have 10 of 17 cities in the United States will be selected, we think. And that's assuming that Edmonton, Montreal, Toronto, Guadalajara, Mexico City, and Monterrey all get games. I think the Mexican cities are good. I'd say Toronto and Montreal are pretty good, although Toronto's got to expand BMO Field to get those, and they would just get first-round games. Edmonton might be a little bit more of a question mark going forward. We'll see. The whole process has been slowed down. The whole bidding process has been slowed down. The touring of the markets, I'm sure all of the city situations have changed because of the pandemic. There's so many different challenges from it, but right now we just don't know what the process is going to be. It is a mystery as to how you'll get down to those 10. You have time to make it work, but time is ticking, and it is a long process. It's not just, oh, cool, you're going to host World Cup games in 2026. Cool, we'll let you know in 25. You'll be fine, no worries. I mean, you're blocking out hotels. You're blocking out all kinds of things with international travel. You're making sure there's training facilities. You're handling security for international competition. Like there's so much
transportation, all that,
all of it. There's so much. So you need as much lead time as possible. They have to make progress on it as quickly as possible. And maybe they can in the first half of this year. I don't know. But the fact that it's still a mystery and still what FIFA and U.S. Soccer want to do with it, if it's going to be clusters, if it's going to be spread out nationally, there's so many different question marks that they have to at least give the parameters. Nail down the parameters so the cities that, maybe don't fit a cluster model like a Seattle, like a Denver, like a Kansas City, so they don't waste their time. They don't have the money to spend right now on a bid for something that they're not likely to get. So let's figure that out. There's a lot of work to be done. It's not going to affect the 26 World Cup right now. It's not going to limit its effectiveness. It's not going to limit its success. The longer it goes on, it's a mystery, it will. So hopefully it can get done sooner rather than later. Other bits of news today, or from yesterday, you might have missed. Andres Perea, Orlando City midfielder, is a member of the U.S. men's national team now. Got the approval from FIFA to make a one-time switch from Colombia. Played in the 2017 U17 World Cup, 2019 U20 World Cup for Colombia. Part of the U23 group right now for the U.S. That's a really good get. I was really impressed with him. It was a great piece of business for Orlando to get him first on loan, then make it permanent from Atlético Nacional. He's born in Tampa. He's an American, so to be able to get him in, really, really good fit. And to get him switched over to the U.S., really good piece of business. Good recruiting from Greg Berhalter. Maybe he went to go talk to Nick Saban about some recruiting tips. He's doing a good job. He's doing a very good job on that front. A lot better than previous administrations were with U.S. soccer. On the NWSL side, we talked about it yesterday. Catarina Macario has signed with Lyon. She said it wasn't down to the draft, wasn't down to potentially having to go to Racing Louisville. It was down to COVID uncertainty. Lyon's playing. NWSL is not right now. We think they'll be in Challenge Cup mode in April and games in May. Don't know for sure yet. That should come out later this week, hopefully, from what Lisa Baird said. But she wanted to make sure she was playing, especially ahead of the Olympics. Also, fresh new adventure, wants to experience a new culture and learn from the best in the world. Lyon is probably the best women's team in the world right now, so that's a good spot for a good young player to be in. I think the concerns about the NWSL draft format and all that were a little overblown. Some players are going to choose to go to Europe, period. That's just where it will be. Other news from Lisa Baird's media call, mentioned it yesterday, Sacramento will be that second California team in 2012, along with Angel City FC. Preseason is set to begin on February 1st, Challenge Cup in April sometime, and the format is still a little up in the air. Regular season in May. The managing partnership with U.S. Soccer has been dissolved. That was something we talked about a lot last year. U.S. Soccer will continue to invest in the NWSL. It is a new chapter, according to Lisa Baird, about how the relationship will go. The Federation's invested an estimated $20 million in the league since its inception. It'll continue to pay the salaries of national team players that are allocated across the league, although players can opt out of that allocation now and potentially make more money because of the way the league has changed their salary structure and added allocation money. So players can make that decision on how they want to do that. They're still working on the details. They are not expecting a significant drop in Federation funding. Now, she did say not expecting a significant drop. That would make you think that maybe there is a drop that will happen, which is not a shock. I mean, U.S. Soccer is losing money like everybody else right now, so not really blown away by that. On the silly season front, couple of updates. Brian Reynolds from Goal.com. Benevento and Juventus have closed the deal, according to Romeo Agresti. Having defined the last bureaucratic aspects, the player will join Benevento for the rest of this season. Total agreement with FC Dallas and MLS, according to Agresti of Goal.com. So that should be announced at any point. Luka Jovic going to Frankfurt, 6-month loan from Real Madrid. No option to buy. Frankfurt's going to cover 20% of his yearly wages during the loan. They get him for 6 months, and he goes back to Madrid. Madrid has identified 6 players they're going to try to sell to bring in money to get Kylian Mbappe in the summer. Gareth Bale, they want to sell him, of course. Marcelo, Jovic, Isco, Dani Ceballos, Brahim Diaz. Diaz is on loan at Milan. They've wanted to make that permanent. Maybe they'll negotiate. AS in Spain is reporting that. They're trying to raise money to get Mbappe. Mbappe might want to stay, might want to go. PSG might want to keep Neymar, let Mbappe go, and bring in Messi. All kinds of things that are going to be up in PSG land. And one other one, Koulibaly from Napoli, Kalidou Koulibaly. He's been linked with Liverpool. He's been linked with Manchester City. He's been linked with Manchester United. According to TalkSport, he would only be sold in January if a team offered £100 million for him right now. I don't think anybody's doing that. I don't think that's happening. Yeah. Update from Christian Jack of TSN and SiriusXM-FC has updated this, and this was starting to bubble up last night as well from some other sources. Chris Armas to Toronto FC looks like it's going to happen. That's a surprise. I do want to see how they sell it, because that is a difference in where they have been. I've said it consistently. I think Armas can be a good coach. This is a huge test for him because he's got to start to oversee a little bit of a reload for Toronto with a lot of veterans in that team. Can he do that while also maturing as a manager himself? You know, he's only got a couple of years. He was in a regimented kind of system at Red Bulls. What's his soccer philosophy? Well, we'll find out. He's got to win people over, because if I'm a Toronto fan, I've got questions about where I've been in finals over the last few years. Going from that and Greg Vanney and everything that the team has done to a manager who was just fired by the New York Red Bulls. You know, like that's a big question mark. So how do they win that over? I want to see how they handle it. Anything else?
Yeah, real quick. Birmingham Legion has signed Junior Flemings to a 1-year deal with a 2022 club option. And the release from Birmingham Legion has quotes from Jay Heaps, Flemings, Colin Martin, Landon Donovan, and Mikey Lopez. So from Colin Martin, coming off the ending of last season, I'm happy for Junior to continue his impressive career in the USL. Personally, I didn't want Junior's career to end, but more importantly, that we learn as players and as a society to be respectful of our differences. I'm optimistic that we'll be better because of this, and that Junior will help advocate for respect within our game. I wish Junior continued success at Legion FC. Jay Heaps quote, Legion FC and every individual associated with the club strongly condemns all racial and homophobic comments and actions. We understand the importance of inclusion, respect, and the impact of our words and the head they have on around us. We also believe that second chances provide opportunities for growth. Jay also says, prior to moving forward, had extensive conversations with junior, former coaches, and teammates to better understand his character on and off the field. We spoke with Colin Martin, Landon Donovan to get their perspective on Legion FC giving Junior this opportunity.
All for second chances, and I think it's really classy that Colin and Landon both spoke on Fleming's behalf. I think that's incredibly classy. So, people are going to ask questions about Birmingham. It sounds like they did their due diligence. Sounds like they talked to everybody involved and are making the decision going forward. He absolutely should have a chance to play. There will be a spotlight on him after what happened. There's no way around that. There will be. And he's got to live up to the second chance that he's been given. That's what happens. That's what we try to do in this country, right? Try to give second chances. Try to let people have that opportunity. So his career should not have been ended for doing something incredibly stupid. He's got to learn from it. We'll see if he has. But I think it's very, very classy that Donovan and Martin both spoke on this in the Birmingham release. I think that's very, very classy on their part.
Yep. One real quick note, I don't know if everybody caught it yesterday. Atlanta United 2 is bringing in Robbie Mertz from Pittsburgh. He was with the Riverhounds last year, so Robbie Mertz will be a part of the twos this year.
Yeah, that had been reported a while back. We've talked about it. Mertz, I think, is coming here for the opportunity to impress the club as a whole, and it's a smart move. Good run with Pittsburgh. Let's see what he can do with Atlanta United too. He'll be looked at to carry a lot of things with this team because he's going to have a lot of younger teammates that are going to be looking up to him. But he's also trying to impress to potentially get an MLS job. That's why you come to Atlanta United too if you're a player like Robbie Mertz. You're coming for those opportunities when you get to train with the first team, and when the first team staff is watching what you're doing, you're trying to impress and show that you can play in the system and fit if there is a need. That's about it. Alex Pacine was very, very happy and wanted to give a special thank you for ending the show without diving into the cluster that was yesterday's Sheffield United Newcastle dumpster fire. Shows a real sense of empathy, and Alex Pacine appreciates it. Yes, that is true. I didn't want to pile on. I didn't. But Steve Bruce really's got to go. Really has to go. He talked about a tactical plan of having 2 false 10s yesterday. False 10s? Really? False 10s after his inside forward talk. Steve Bruce has got to go. Steve Bruce has passed Big Sam in my book of managers that make me angry. I'm sorry, Alex. That's all I'm going to say about it. Johannes shares another. Man, things are getting wacky here as we wrap up. Tom Bogert tweets out that the Colorado Rapids have acquired Michael Barrios from FC Dallas in exchange for an international spot, super draft considerations. I love Michael Barrios as a player, great 1v1 player. Started to become more of a super sub for Dallas, and he's more than that in my opinion. So this is a good move for Colorado. They get this done. Didn't see this one coming. Colorado needed a little bit of a splash, but it fits what Colorado's been doing lately, right? Guys who are surplus to requirements at different clubs in MLS veterans, bring them in and piece it together and see what you get. Barrios fits that model. I think he's a good player. I think he's a really good player who needs to play more, and he can be a big help to Colorado. I'm sure there will be more stuff that happens between now and 2 o'clock, but we will have stoppage time. I was
going to say, where are you now?
Stoppage time, 2 o'clock, facebook.com/929. The game. Mike and I will get into all of these different MLS moves, all the different MLS conversation. Join us there. Ask more questions. We'll get into it. For our subscribers, if you're on the Discord, I'm sure people will be watching Boca and Santos at 5, and then watching Vélez and Lanús at 7:30. A lot of fun talk about VAR last night. That will hopefully not be the storylines tonight, but who knows. Also, if questions pop up, things happen during the day outside of shows, you can throw them in there. It can lead to a discussion in the next show. It can just be something that gets discussed on the Discord. So if you're a subscriber on Twitch, if you're one of our Patreon members and you don't have that invite, please give me a heads up so I can get that to you, and you can join that conversation. Also, if you didn't see it, it posted late Monday. I did it with Generation Adidas International, which is based here in Atlanta. Billy Hartman started that organization decades ago and does great work. Normally, during this week in the year, it's the United Soccer Coaches Convention, formerly the NSCAA Convention. I loved going to the convention. It was a great opportunity to interact with people from all over the country, also see old friends. I haven't had a chance to go in a couple of years, and of course there isn't one this year. It's all virtual. So Generation Adidas International wanted to put together kind of a social, and I know a few folks got together on a very socially distanced setup over at Two Urban Licks, and it was great that Two Urban Licks was able to take their 400 capacity venue and turn it into, I think, a 30 capacity venue for people to get a chance to see one another. But we did a virtual component to that, and it's on our YouTube page with full video. It's also available as a podcast everywhere you get podcasts. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, Tony Annan, Dean Atkins from Atlanta United, it was the first chance I had a chance to talk to Dean, and Laura Halfpenny, the new executive director at Georgia Soccer. She took over in July. Talk to them about 2020, talk to them about, what they've learned, what they're going to take forward, what 2021 is looking like. Great conversation with all of them, and we're able to put that together for Generation Adidas International. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to it or see it, please go check that out. You've heard from Tony many, many times. He's always great to chat with. Dean was great getting into the Regional Development School, something that maybe not everybody knows a lot about when it comes to Atlanta United's overall big picture strategy. And from Laura talking about things that Georgia Soccer is working on, has already implemented when it comes to referee development, referee education, coaching development. Great stuff from Laura, and we'll be doing more with Georgia Soccer as we get forward and things start to resemble some form of normal. So We shall see. That'll do it for now. If you need that invite to the Discord, please let me know. Check out that social from Monday night and watch us on stoppage time at 2:00. We'll be back in the morning. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.